MLS is the first division of soccer in the United States of America. However, due to many factors, many soccer fans in this country have not fully embraced the league, despite its massive growth in the past 25 years or so. One of the reasons is that it's a closed system. It does not have promotion relegation, which can make it feel pointless at times or, protective of mediocrity. Now, what if I told you that we might actually have a professional soccer league in the United States with promotion relegation coming soon? Maybe. Hopefully it happens. And today we're going to talk about someone that is involved in this project that hopefully will happen. Hi, if you're new here, I'm Filippo, and welcome to Tactical Manager TV, and welcome to episode 2 of our 2-episode mini-series with Greg Lalas. Which, as I said before in the previous episode, Greg Lalas is the Chief Marketing Officer of USL, which is the second division of soccer in the United States of America. He's also the cooler version of the Lalas brothers. For episode 1, we went through USL's current structure, how it's different from MLS, its future goals, current goals, recent growth, and much more. You can go check that out if you don't know much about USL. And if you have a USL team, make sure to comment down below if you haven't already. For episode 2, we will dive into their future plans of implementing Pro Rel. Are the rumors true? What are the challenges? Are the owners actually on board with it? We're going to talk about all of that with Greg Lalas. So you can just sit back, relax, hit the like button if you're for Pro Rel, which means we should probably get over 1,000 likes in this video. And that's all, man. That's all I have to say. We're going to roll the intro now and bring in Greg Lalas to talk about promotion relegation in United Soccer League. Okay, everyone, part 2 of our interview with Greg Lalas. We actually never left, so I'm not going to say hi to you again. It would just be awkward.
We should change our shirt or something, right? We should change what we're wearing. It's a totally different day, and
I should have put my Tampa Bay Rowdies kit that I have, the old school one. But let's talk about this part 2, which I think this one might even be. I think both are very important because the first one, people learn more about USL, which, as we talked about, some people know it exists, but they don't understand the structure, and then now they get a big picture of it. But let's talk about this topic, which definitely intrigues more people, and it's for some reason it's controversial in U.S. soccer. Just promotion relegation happens pretty much in every country in the world when it comes to soccer. In the U.S., we don't have that, but we've seen USL, I would say, tease or talk about how they're thinking about doing it. So my first question to you about it is it a real possibility for USL to implement promotion relegation within its own leagues? Because you talked about in the first section how you have 2 pro leagues and one that is not professional yet, but maybe one day it'll be. USL Championship is the second division of the United States, and you've got League One, which would be below that. Is promotion relegation happening in USL? Yes or no? What do you think? Or not what do you think? What do you know?
So look, I think, as you mentioned, right, we've been very vocal about wanting to explore what Pro Rel would look like, right? The thing that I think everyone just sort of really needs to recognize is we've been doing the work for this for several years now, right? Because it is it's a large strategic endeavor that would really change the landscape of the USL if we were to implement it, right? So as I mentioned in part 1 of our talk, right, there's a history to the USL that goes all the way back to before the 1994 World Cup even, right? So as you can imagine, there are a lot of things that need to be worked out, right, with all of our clubs, right? There are a lot of strategic elements to something like implementing a Pro Rel system that just need to make sure everyone's on the same page and everyone is going to be pulling in the right direction. We're still doing that work, right? We're working with our ownership groups at all levels to understand how we can address some of the structural things that they're concerned about, but really also what are the opportunities and really laying out what some of those opportunities are. But we need to be very, I don't know, right, they're smart and thoughtful about it, right? And I think that in the past, maybe we've, under different leadership at times, right, there's been a little bit of a flippancy, right, to it. The key, though, is that we've got to be really thoughtful about the implementation of it, because we're only going to get one shot at it, right? So if we implement it, it's got to be great. It's got to work, right? And by work, that means it's presenting a totally different experience across the board, right? For fans, for clubs, for players, right? And, you know, you're going to give it some time to figure out, like, okay, is it working? But we've only got one shot. And so if there's something that we didn't think about, if there's something that we didn't put into our consideration set around this that could undermine it all, right? And like all of a sudden, whatever it is, it might be financial, it might be player development, it might be, I don't know, there are all these other things that we want to think about, right? If we get any of those wrong, does it bring the whole thing down? And now it's a failed endeavor. And that's not what we want. We want to be thoughtful about it. We want to make sure that everybody is fully on board so that we are all pulling in the right direction to make sure it works. And we're going to take the time needed to really do that.
So it is something that is being talked about for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, we are still discussing it, and you know, we're still doing the work around it. So, you know, and look, that's not to say that it's going to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it might be that we do all the work and we all get on board and we all just say, you know what, we're not there yet, right? Or maybe it doesn't make sense for us, right? Or whatever it is. But we're definitely doing the work. I think we've been, obviously, like I said, we've been very vocal about wanting to do something like this, but we've got to get it right. So we see it as a major strategic initiative that we are developing and hoping that we can get to a place to implement. But if it all comes back at the end that it's not the right thing to do, and we see, you know, that the risks outweigh the rewards, then we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that to the game. We're not going to do that to our fans. We're not going to do that to our clubs or the players or anybody like that. So, you know, so that's where we are right now.
I fully agree. I think doing it right is far more important than just trying to do it, because it also, keep in mind, if USL does it and it fails for whatever reason, like you said, there's so many elements to it that maybe one thing that you get wrong takes everything down.
Correct.
If it fails because of one mistake, what's going to happen is just everyone's going to say it doesn't work in America. We can't ever do it. No one wants to try it anymore.
Right.
Because USL has some stability right now. And then if they do that and it fails, it's all of a sudden it's a disaster. I don't know how much you can open up about the talks, and I'm just going to throw some ideas or questions that I had, because every time I thought about promotion relegation in the United States, I think a little bit about Brazil because of the way both countries are, not in terms of soccer culture, but size. Okay. So in Brazil, because of the size of the country, it's not very viable to have like smaller league teams playing across the other side of the country, or at the northeast all the way down to the south. Brazil, a lot of travel, money. And for the United States, I find it similar. The U.S., in terms of land, we are bigger than Brazil, but it's not like by too much, right? These are two big countries.
They're pretty comparable in that way.
Yeah, it's not like Portugal. That's a small country where
a bus, right?
Yeah, or England too. That's so close. Yeah. It's like a state in Brazil or a state in the United States. Yeah. So Brazil, the way they're structured is they have like the state tournaments, and those have lower divisions, and from there, obviously the top teams are already in the first, second division, but then other teams can qualify to the Serie D, which is the fourth division of the national level, and then from there it can go to third. Is there anything in USL thinking about doing some lower level soccer in a more regional environment, like keeping it more like maybe state? Maybe state won't be enough because we don't have enough teams here in the US, but more of like the region. Like for example, if we're gonna go here, it can go like Florida and Georgia together. Is there any talks about that? And then from there, you can start to build like an actual promotion relegation, like region, third division, second, and first. Or in this case, like USL would be technically the second, so it'd be, you get what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I think the idea of regionalization is an interesting one, and definitely one that works. We have explored and are continuing to explore, right? Because what you're saying about Brazil and those challenges that they would have, that they have around a pro-rel system and like a little tiny, you know, town going up, and now they've got to travel over here, and they've got to, and the costs change, and now stadium standards and things like that, right? These are some of the things that we are trying to work through, right? And the size of our country is obviously a big part of it, right? Because you can imagine that over the course of several years in a promotion relegation system, you could all of a sudden end up with 8 teams on the West Coast and sort of 1 team in New England, right? Or whatever it is, and 1 team in Florida. And now you're in this weird travel space and time zones. And what does that do to TV, right? And the ability to be on a national network where you've got so many of your games over here, because we have to remember that we're in 4 time zones, right? So that also changes some of the calculus around stuff. And so these are the kinds of things that we have been researching over the last couple of years, is what is the lift then for doing a pro rel? What are those risks? What are those challenges? The idea of regionalization is something that we're actually actively exploring already, right? So I'll give you 2 examples. One, in League 2, right, we have divisions. So yes, it's pre-professional, right, but it's all set up in divisions. You've got a West Coast division or a Mountain division, the Southeast division, Mid-Atlantic division, and we're working in those types of scenarios because these are pre-professional teams, so they've got to be able to bus. It's got to be close. They're not flying all over the country. Also, though, in League 1 at the professional level, we've introduced an interleague season-long cup competition. It's called the USL Jägermeister Cup. Great sponsor, absolutely the best sponsor you could have for some sort of a soccer competition, right? Our tagline is a shot at glory, right? Because who doesn't love a good Jaeger shot here and there, right? And what that's done is we've got everybody in regionalized groups. So there's a group stage, right? And it's as regionalized as it can be within League 1. So, it's a little bit, the Western region's a little bit, obviously, much larger, where you have Spokane, Central Valley in Fresno, California, plus Northern Colorado and Omaha. So, that's a much larger region. It's a harder one just because of the geography of it all. But then in other regions, you get the sort of Greenville, Knoxville, Chattanooga, these smaller regionalized areas. And what that has done is it builds up regional rivalries, right? I'm sure you see that in Brazil in the state leagues, where 2 teams from towns that are right next to each other can battle against each other. It's more interesting. It's a game of consequence, even if there's nothing on the line, right? Pride is on the line, right? So that matters. And so, we're starting to look at those types of things. What's interesting about that cup competition, and if you look at the underlying side of that, is within those group stages, everyone will play 8 games. But when you look at a full season for any one club in the USL League 1, they're playing a 30-game season. So you take out the 8 and you're left with 22. Those 22, if you think about it, is a completely balanced schedule across the league, right? Because we have 12 teams. So now everyone's playing home and away. Mm-hmm. One of the keys to anything related to a pro-rel system, we believe, is if it's going to be merit-based on whether you're going up and down, it's got to be a balanced schedule. So now you start to see that this cup competition is not only building up regional rivalries, adding more games of consequence, right? Adding some fun elements to it as well, right? With penalty shootouts in the group stage, that kind of thing. But it's also helping us to lay the foundation for a potential for something like a pro-rel. As we start to think about something like, oh, you need a balanced schedule? Well, let's see what that looks like. Let's do an experiment and see what that looks like.
And I like that you brought up the scheduling, and I want to make this clear. These are my words, not yours, just so it doesn't get you in trouble with it. But MLS scheduling, when you talk about that balanced schedule, the MLS schedule is not really always balanced in that sense. Like you said, it actually never is that way, where you play home and away against every team. So again, I'm not saying that it's done on purpose, but it can benefit some teams, even if it is by accident, depending on how it's made, how it's done, the timing, not stopping for FIFA international windows, for example. Maybe you put certain games during the Copa America, and then all of a sudden Inter Miami's playing without Messi against these opponents. That's benefiting those opponents and the travel, all of that.
Well, that's one thing that we did with the USL Super League, right? Was we took that into account with our new professional women's league by thinking about how do we want to address that? Because what we've done with the USL Super League is we're going to be the only professional soccer league in America that plays on what is the most prominent schedule in Europe, right? So our league kicks off in August and it will run to June. So it's running that sort of fall to spring schedule as opposed to the winter to fall schedule that all other leagues play on. And a lot of that was done for several reasons. One, because we wanted to put our fans and our players first. That's the main thing, right? Because what it does is it means you're not going to miss the best players because they're away on international duty. So the fan gets a better experience, right? And then you're also thinking about players so that they have that opportunity to go to the World Cup or the Olympics or the W Gold Cup or whatever it is, so that we can start, looking out for their career, giving them the appropriate rest, right? And doing it differently. Now we've got USL professional soccer programming sort of all year long as well. So that's, some of those benefits that come through from that.
And then last but not least, before we talk about the league competition instead of club competition that happens very often here in the US, is you talked about how it's on the works and you are thinking about the risks, the rewards, if it's worth it, if it's not. It does clearly show to me that you guys want to do it. And if you are certain that, not certain, because even when you do all the research, it's never certain that it'll work.
Exactly.
Do you think that from the owners that you have spoken to, which I'm sure you have interacted with, do you think most of them are more towards, let's try this? Obviously, after we've done our research properly, are they more for it or against it? Is there more pushback or more, I guess, positive feedback towards it?
I would give our owners actually a lot of credit in that they are enthusiastic about doing something that would really differentiate us in the American sports landscape, right? It's not just about soccer, right? But it would really differentiate the men's professional leagues in the USL from anything else in the sports. So I give them a lot of credit that they are open to it, right? As long as we can just do it in the right way, take into account their concerns, right? And it's been interesting to watch. Like every owner has like different concerns and different perspectives, and they bring it in. So as you're trying to corral all of those opinions into one cohesive thought for the league, right? It's hard. It's always hard, right? And especially because we've always prided ourselves in the USL on the independence of our clubs, right? So now they really are thinking from their own lens. And so that's the work we're doing. But I can tell you that the owners are extremely open to it and want to explore it and talk about it. And look at what the research comes back to tell them.
Are you allowed to share what would be the number one concern that you've heard so far, or you're not allowed to share that information right now?
Yeah, I don't think there's any number one concern. I really don't. I really think it's just like there's that concern of saying like, let's make sure we get it right, right? Because there's so much that could be wrong, but there's so much that they recognize there's real value, potential value to all of this, right? But like, I'll say there's probably concern about like, well, what if my team goes down, right? What does that mean for me, right? Like
solidarity payments, how's that going to work?
Right, exactly. So there's all of these things that they want us to really think through, and they look to our leadership, right? And our president, Paul McDonough, is doing a really good job, I think, of helping guide all of us through what is a very complicated initiative that we're trying to put together.
Last but not least, and this is and then once again, I let you say whatever you want here, and try not to get in trouble, because obviously I know USL and MLS. I mean, you don't want to say certain things to criticize one organization or another. You talk more about your own organization, USL. But in the United States, when you go to other countries, you were talking about, for example, Brazil, like state rivalries between teams. No one cares really about the league itself. No, like what I'm trying to say is you don't go to Brazil and someone's like, I'm a Brasileirão fan, or I'm a Brasileirão Serie B fan, or this. They're like, this is my team.
Yeah.
And for all I care, your team is in the first division playing the Club World Cup. You can lose. I don't care. It's about my team. For the most part, obviously, there's exceptions. There are some fans that want Brazilian soccer to go up, but it's a very small group. In the US, it does feel like there's like leagues fans. Instead of obviously there's competition among teams, like we used to, at least the US Open Cup. We still have it, but MLS decided to do their own thing there. but it feels like very often the leagues are competing with each other. I believe we saw a little bit of a battle between NISA, right, and MLS a few years back. To a certain extent nowadays, USL and MLS, they're competing. We saw what happened to the San Diego Loyal recently. Do you think this competition among leagues is healthy for U.S. soccer? Is it something the federation should maybe interfere and maybe the leagues? Sure, you guys are competing for markets and everything, but there should be more of a cooperation.
Um, Look, I think one of the things that I'm going to steal a line from a guy named Mark Abbott, who was very instrumental and really in many ways the architect of Major League Soccer way back in the 90s. And he built, and he worked at MLS for 20, 25 years and an executive role in helping to really build what MLS is and has become. And he always used to say when he would get questions like this, which I thought was really good, he said, to some extent, all leagues are competing with all other leagues. But you can only focus on what you're doing, right? And so I think that what we are trying to do at the USL is have the biggest impact in our local communities, put on the best soccer experience for our fans that we can, right? And hopefully instill in them a passion for the game, right? And also to build value for our owners and our clubs, right? So that this has become sustainable over time as much as possible. Soccer in America is going to continue to grow over the next several years, especially. It's going to accelerate that growth, right? With Copa America, next year with the Club World Cup, even the Olympics this year hopefully does something if our teams can perform, right? The Men's World Cup in 26, the women's hopefully the Olympics in 27, right? All of these things are going to have a huge impact on the growth of soccer in America. And so I just think that all of us all of us want to be in a position to take advantage of this, right? Our soccer in America is structured differently than it is anywhere in the world. And that's just the reality that we are in. And so I don't really have an opinion about whether it's the right way to be or not the right way to be. I just feel like that's where we are. And I try to be as realistic as possible about that. And so let's operate within that as it is. We will advocate for what we're doing. We will try to get better in everything we do every single day. And, kind of like a coach, right? I can't control how the other team trains or the other team sets up. I can control what my team does. And so that's what we're going to do. So that's the way I feel about it.
Yeah, I guess mainly what I meant was, so let me try to put this into context. MLS is I'm using Brazil and US as an example because it's just easier for me. MLS is the Brasileirão, the Brazilian Serie A, the first division there.
Mm-hmm.
And then USL is the Brazilian second division, the Serie B.
Mm-hmm.
The Brazilian Serie A and Serie B, they don't really compete with each other at all. Like in terms of expansion, markets, TV, it's organized in a way where you can watch both. And also, like we said, it's more about clubs than leagues. So if your team went down there, you're going to be watching your team. Obviously, this doesn't happen in US soccer. MLS teams stay in MLS. But again, it does feel like at times there's certain things that happen in US soccer that are calculated, strategic, and done on purpose for one league to hurt the other. And again, these are my words, not yours. So I am saying this. And I personally think that does hurt US soccer to a certain extent, because I don't think USL taking down MLS or MLS taking down USL or NISA going bankrupt or whatever, I don't think any of that is good for US soccer. I think we don't, in my opinion, for the size of this country, we don't have enough professional clubs. We need to have more. And that's why I was saying in the previous episode, I didn't expand upon it. But that's why I said I think it's important for USL to grow more than MLS right now. That's why I think we need to cover more ground in this country. And USL has more teams. You talk professional teams, there's more. I don't consider MLS Next Pro professional, even though technically they are. They're more like youth teams for the most part, outside of a few. And then you talked about League Two, that hopefully eventually you guys get it to be professional. And if you guys do an open pyramid, or not open pyramid, promotion relegation, it would obviously probably, if done right, it would probably expand the number of professional teams in the U.S. over time if USL implements promotion relegation naturally. Some smaller teams, some community teams. Those are just my thoughts. I wanted to pick your brain on it, but I know this is also a topic that is a bit I don't know. I guess it's a bit annoying to ask someone that for yourself, like to answer it, because you can only focus on yourself, and you're like, well, what am I going to say? Like, I'm going to tell him, but that's what I wanted to pick on. But Greg,
Yeah.
those are mainly the topics I wanted to talk about with you today. Hopefully, with part one, people understood more of what USL is. They look into it, start trying to watch it more, support it if their city has a local USL team.
Absolutely.
Will there be more games on CBS? Yes, right?
Yep, there's games. So our TV deal is, we're with CBS, so we've got more games on big CBS. You can also watch across the season 75 games on the Golazo network. Right, it's free to watch through the CBS Sports app and on web and things like that. And then we have about 22 games on CBS Sports Network. So that's our package with CBS. And all the other games nationally, you can catch on ESPN platforms. So, ESPN2, ESPN Plus, it's all over there too.
Okay. And everyone, if you have a USL team in your city and you like soccer, go give it a shot. Just
Definitely.
go give it a shot.
Yeah.
See if you enjoy it. I think you probably will enjoy it. And that's all.
Great
And go watch
experience.
it.
It's like the fact that we're having this conversation, we talked about history in part one, right? And the fact that we're even having conversations like this about professional teams and the scale of professional soccer in America continuing to grow. I've been around this game a very long time. When I was a kid, I had to go to Windsor, Canada to watch professional soccer, right? Nobody has to do that anymore. It's in your hometown. The USL has a team there. Somebody has a professional team, right? And if it's not there yet, it's coming. And so, support it. That's what I always say. Tune in and turn up, right? And really think about, how you love this game and how you can be an advocate for the game, for your club, and for your community through soccer.
Perfect. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Drop a like before you go. And if you want to, make sure to follow Greg on Twitter or X, sorry. The handle for his X account is right there next to his name. Thank you for watching and have a great day. Bye-bye.